Hi, this is Allison Germody,
And I'm Lauren Connard.
and this is our project about World War II. So we're just gonna start off by showing our main project where everything can be found on, and we'll be turning this in, and this just has everything, every part of our project. And then that's the end, and now we're gonna show our slides.
Okay, so to start off with our project, we made our essential questions. So our first question was, why do people or countries enter wars? And then what changes did World War II end up facilitating? We thought these were questions that students could really come up with different answers, and they're like, for why do people and countries enter war? There could be different reasons why. And so our supporting questions to guide the inquiry were, how did the war affect women and minority groups? How did the propaganda affect the changing attitudes in the United States? Why did the United States remain neutral for 2 years? And what events led to the United States' involvement in World War II? So for our primary sources, we are going to go to our keeping track of our primary sources for this part of the presentation. So we have a variety of sources. We tried to have a mixture of interviews with a first person account, photos, and we also wanted to include propaganda. We feel this would be a very overarching way to get the students involved and with the different readings of a text, video, photos. There's different primary sources that they would have to determine and interpret with their project to help guide that inquiry. So if we head back to the slides, we will go to where we had the corroboration of data that we did some research on. So we found three sources and we tried to make sure they were kind of different. So we had a college, a museum, and then the history. So between these sources, they all talked about World War II, but they had different touches in them. For example, the history source talked about the struggles of African Americans during the war due to the discrimination they had to face there while also fighting a war across and overseas. And then the National World War II Museum really dove into what the Americans did to help, which is where the propaganda really comes into how they made it easy for the citizens to understand what to do. And then the closer look had photos and the importance of why people needed to help and also how they got drafted, which I feel like is a very interesting topic for students to learn about.
All right, so next we have our claims. So our first claim is the attack of Pearl Harbor on December 7th caused the United States to enter the war. Our next one is the war effort included men, women, and children. And our last claim is war production gave opportunities to all Americans, including minority groups. So then we'll go into our evidence. And our first evidence was before the attack on Pearl Harbor, the United States was neutral in the war. And we found many articles, and it said after the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor, the United States can no longer remain neutral. And our second evidence to our second claim is that the United States not only include the soldiers fighting in the war, but it consisted of numerous people. And there were many women that led jobs working in factories to help build machinery while men were fighting off in the war. And they also drove trucks and repaired airplanes. And then our third piece of evidence is there are many different types of people that helped work in war production. Like I said before, many women worked in war production, and people of color also made great contributions to war production, and African Americans were served in equally vital positions throughout the Army as nurses, engineers, drivers, gunners. Everyone worked together to help the war. So next we have the diversity of viewpoints. So this is kind of personal to me because my grandma escaped from Germany when she was a child during World War II, and my sister got to interview her when she was younger, and she wrote a paper about it. And it's really fascinating to hear what a child went through during that time. So next, we're gonna go through the timeline of events. So we gathered this timeline and we made it on Canva through all the sources that we found. And it's really interesting to go all the way from 1939 to 1945 when the war ended. And you can look in this more deeper on our final presentation when we turn it in.
So we chose this for a variety of reasons, but we felt that it's important for students to learn the various sides of war. There are pros and cons that happen in war, and for them really to dive into those aspects. And this inquiry helps showed what occurred on the home front of the war after Pearl Harbor occurred. And through the inquiry, students are able to see how their country came together to fight against a common cause and really united when the Americans and the troops really needed them to, and the missteps that the country took towards Japanese Americans and the camps that they were sent to, and understand why Americans joined the war after not for so long and trying to keep that neutrality. So we feel it's a very overarching topic, and it's significant for children to learn because of how it affected later and how propaganda was specifically used during that time.
All right, well, thank you. That is our presentation.